So we've got one of our CEOs for a business in North America who's basing himself at home at the moment, in the main anyway. He's making around 150 calls a week to his team members in his business. So he's calling forklift drivers, warehouse operatives who are based in the warehouse environment. He's calling sales teams who are working from home, just checking in with them to see how they're doing, letting them know about what's happening in the wider business because they may feel disconnected. And if he picks up on any concerns around any anxiety, for example, he will let the line manager of that person know so that they can be in touch and manage that situation in the right way. So that's a great example of being in touch, and as a CEO, really being in touch with all of your people. The other thing that was very useful for us was to monitor the trends that were happening in different markets. So for example, because Italy was going into lockdown much earlier, they were able to see the sort of impact it was having on people through the period of lockdown. So we would talk about three distinct phases. The first phase was a novelty phase. So for around the first week or 10 days, it was quite a novelty to be at home, to be perhaps with the family, have a bit more flexibility with your time. And it was a talking point. So when people were having meetings, video conferences, it would be a talking point. And then it moved into the normality phase. So it was no longer interesting, it was just the way it was. So people were then talking just about the business issues, and the novelty was really wearing off from working from home. And then in the third phase, it's when the anxiety and the concern starts to set in. So it's now going on for quite a long time. When are we going to be going back to the office environment? How long is it going to go on for? Perhaps exercise hasn't been quite as easy to do, particularly if people are living in apartments in an urban environment. So that anxiety phase is something we recognise would happen in other parts of our business, and so we can start to prepare for that. And in some cases, providing coaching or mentoring to people who just want to talk to somebody who has the expertise to be able to help people through those sorts of emotions when you're working for a long period of time in that remote situation. So that's a really good example, again, of sharing experiences so that you can be proactive in other parts of your group, as the lockdown in this case was going on for much longer. The sort of practices that we're seeing are people working in team shifts. So for example, one team will come in for 1 week and then alternate with another team for another week. So minimizing the overlap, if you like, and the physical interactions where you possibly can. Dividing up functions into separate zones. So where people are working in particular parts of the business or the factory, they stay in their zone and they don't mix. So controlling those sorts of practices. Safe distancing on lots of signage and messaging up to remind people about safe distancing. We've seen examples as well where in canteens, seating has been removed so that people can't sit too closely together around tables in canteen environments, and really increasing the amount of cleaning routines that are going on as well. So really focusing on the hygiene and the cleaning aspects of the operation. We've seen a lovely example as well in one of our operations where the general manager of the operation will do a team briefing outside. So as long as the weather, of course, is dry, but he will take the team outside so they can stand 2 meters apart and they can have a team brief as well. So just being very sensible, very practical. And I think that's something that in the business people have really appreciated, having that information shared so they can start to mirror that sort of practice. Going forward, as people start getting introduced into the workplace, I think there'll be a lot of work around looking at still people staying at home where they can, rather. So for remote workers, perhaps people in support roles where they're able to carry on working from home, that may continue for a little bit longer where we can do that. Certainly making sure there's lots of signage up, lots of visual communication around reminding people of working at a safe distance. We are seeing some debates around other areas such as face masks and whether they do need to be used and formally applied, and that advice does vary in different parts of the world.